Hello, everybody, and this is our last session before we head out to the Museum of Ice Cream. So this session is about how we bring life back into cities and create moments that elevate our human experience and that connect us with shared experiences and spaces. So when you think about this, I'll start with you, Fadi. Where are we each approaching this discussion from? And so perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Moment Factory, and then tell us how it shapes your contributions to this topic today.
Yeah, well, there's been, hi everyone, very happy to be here with all this great audience. It's actually really the question that came up was interesting because there was a lot of discussion today how pandemic has changed the city in general, and how it's brought forward new conversations about the city that go beyond the hardware of the city and the infrastructure and the mobility and even the software of the city, which is kind of regulation and so on. And we're moving more into a conversation about the well-being in the city, about why it matters, why do we live in the city, and why do we stick in the city. So my background is at Moment Factory, we're an entertainment studio. For us, this kind of intangible layer of entertainment, of culture, of spending time with others in public is really part of our DNA. So for me, approaching this conversation around the moments about how we spend time in the city is really a great conversation. I'm very happy that World City is picking up the mantle, because previously most of the conversations were really about the hard stuff. And now there's a forum for this. Great,
thank you. Manish?
I'm approaching this today, being in New York. I've been here for 20 years, just officially moved to Austin on Friday. And the Museum of Ice Cream started here 6 years ago. And I'm thinking today, like, could the Museum of Ice Cream launched in any other city? We launched across from the Whitney Museum, the new Whitney that was built back then. It opened a year before in the meatpacking district. It really changed the fabric and very purposefully put that first pop-up door-to-door facing the Museum of Ice Cream. It was a bit of a middle finger, or an FU to the art world, and also thinking about how can the streets help us build this experiment? Can we take something so accessible as ice cream and combine it with design and art and make a place for adults to play across from a very serious art institution? And thinking about this discussion all day today, thinking about the anchors of the cities. New York has an anchor, which is our streets. The city is an anchor. America doesn't have that in any other city. So when the cities become dirty or crime-ridden, or in COVID, super grateful for this city because we took to the streets, and that's all we had to do. The entertainment was there. Even if we didn't have our normal lives, the entertainment still could exist in the streets. And that's a powerful anchor. Then I walk into the New York Times building, and I'm in this room, and this room is ostensibly beautiful, but I hate it. I hate this freaking room. This is a flat theater. It's like an old newspaper. Like we're standing in a New York Times paper from the 1980s in a brand new building. And this separation between us is not an experience. That's not New York. New York is us crossing paths, bumping into each other, sitting in too crowded a space. There's too much space between you all. And that's what makes New York beautiful.
I just told Manish that he was sitting too close to me.
Yes, she already told me. She accused me of being a close talker. And so I think the magic of New York is it replicable? Because then you go to the other cities in America, and yeah, there's more space, but we don't have that cross intersection. So when I think about our biggest problem right now, is that the streets might be great, but we have the barriers of this architecture inside here. We have the barriers that our cities create huge barriers to build. We have community boards that control the 5 or 6 people will prevent Soho from greenifying. So we have all these problems that are making people leave New York because of the regulations, because of the policies, because of development issues, because of costs, where it's becoming cheaper to build elsewhere, but we don't have the magic or the population or the ability to amplify those experiences in other places.
So that leads up to the next thing. So how do we breathe life back into cities then? Go ahead, Fadi.
Should we do it now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think each one of us has a medium, right? Manish works with a certain medium design. A lot of people were talking, in the hospitality industry about F&B and about the medium of food and how food becomes a place to attract people. The earlier designers and architects were talking about how we build for the city. And I think each one has to use these mediums to create something that is more engaging, and that's, I think, the engagement being really the proximity, the collapse of that distance between people, and something that drives me. And our medium is multimedia, so we use media as a way to expand our imaginaries, because cities have always been a place where we imagine new things, where we come into the city to think about something else than being just separate. For instance, now, one of the main catchphrases of the kind of advertising world is "from the comfort of your own home." It's like, what comfort from my own home? I think it's lonely and I'm bored. So I think that it's like a Lucky Strike advertisement from the 50s about cigarettes. How it's like velvet. Oops, it's like velvet to my throat. No, it's not comfort of your own home. We have to be in the public space. Check it out. It's a beautiful ad. But I think just being together, being in the city, and for us, using our medium, we have been thinking about how it can shape the energy of a space. I was talking a bit earlier about the AT&T project, where AT&T installed this big screen on a public space in their district, downtown Dallas, to kind of give back to the city. And the idea of that became that we didn't want it to be just another screen that was playing advertisement or etc. So there was all original stuff that AT&T commissioned. And we thought about it as a way to shape the energy of every moment. Like, what's the energy of the morning, or what kind of energy do you want to have in the morning, and kind of come up with things for these media that were installed there that help people start their day, be inspired, think about something else. And then there was these down moments with a lot of coffee shops and F&B. These were moments for conversations, for reflection, for inspiration. So the content that we created was also a way to enrich these moments, and so on and so forth. So I think the medium that we have a lot of tools in our hands. I think it's how we use them.
Fadi, before I move to Manish, do you want to tell us a little bit about the medium that you work with?
Yeah, so we still use the word multimedia, even though we are in 2022, because it is a multimedia. So we are using images, sound, interaction, etc. And obviously, this universe has expanded in the past couple of years, and now we're talking about online media, and then in real life versus virtual, etc. So basically, using content that is on screens, but also in every type of installation. Could be light, could be physical spaces that are designed for people to kind of where we could use these medium to change the sense, or to address the sense and how we sense the reality around us. So that's
great.
I hope that answers.
Yeah. Manish, you want to go?
Well, just to add, I think what you guys are doing is brilliant, because I actually, in general, hate the projection box, like this movement to the Van Gogh crap that exists as a projection box, versus what you guys do, which is take a zoo or take a garden and make that come to life in a different way, and use technology to enhance like the greatness of our public spaces as well. So I think there's a huge thing that you guys are influencing the whole industry to think outside of the box. In terms of the city, I think the question was about
how do you breathe life?
How do you breathe life into cities? I think that my fear is that we go back, and we are going back to like the traditional formats. We want to put food courts, and we want to talk about restaurants, and developers want to talk about putting art and things. But if they fundamentally don't create a social space, a cross-contamination, a policy that allows people to play and to create, as opposed to like us creating something and then people participating. That's what passive entertainment is. This is my like pet peeve. I was talking to Steve Tam, who's a legendary producer over here. You guys can meet him later in New York. And I think restaurants are the equivalent of like building a dining room, like the old dining rooms in your homes. Who's building like a dining room, a formal dining room? They don't exist anymore, right? That's what a restaurant is. A standard restaurant is a formal dining room. We should get rid of them. Like they don't actually do anything, right? They're worse experiences than eating in your outdoor space, in your balcony, in your fake, whatever, or in your living room, right? It's a worse experience. So why do they exist? So I think cities we have to be thinking differently. We have to be thinking about what is going to get us to socially interact? How are we going to overcome the fact that we have teenagers who haven't had a prom, who don't know have never been on a date, who are going into college and don't know how to throw a party? Those traditions are gone, that social elements are gone. What we are passionate about is the fact that if those who haven't been to the Museum of Ice Creams, you will see this tonight, is that what you see in social is not the experience. The experience is about how we get you to play. That is the whole premise of the Museum of Ice Cream. It was built for adults. We did not even think about children. Our pop-up was for 35 days in the original museum. We didn't even think that we had to adjust for like a 5-year-old kids and their viewpoints. We had no idea. We wanted a place where we, as some people in our 20s and 30s, could go and play and be social and get off our phones, even though we are the most social media venue in the world by square feet. So yes, social media helped us, but it's the biggest barrier for people to actually like our experiences. So there is this element of like, what is a moment? A moment is nothing unless there's actually like an authentic social experience. And what you're seeing is the people who are really pushing the envelope, whether it's Burning Man or creators like Steve, who are creating social experiences. That hasn't yet, I think, proliferated into development, into cities, because cities aren't changing the fact that there's 4-lane roads with cars in the middle of cities like Dallas. It's impossible to have social interaction. You're never going to talk to anyone if you're in your car all the time. And so that's what I'm passionate about, is like, how do we really rethink our cities? We can't rethink about it just because a fancy development puts a attraction in it. It doesn't help us. It also doesn't help us if the cities are making it more hard for people to build physical elements than it is to build technology companies. And that's the reality. That's San Francisco. San Francisco has killed every retail business and is like should be the case study. We will be talking about it like Detroit. San Francisco should be thought of as Detroit, the killer of retail and physical businesses. It's the city, it's the policy, it's the interaction with the communities. We're not talking about that enough. We should be talking about the greatest wealth creation in history in the last 20 years in a place that killed small businesses. And that's not just the government's fault, that's the entire infrastructure of the city. Like, that to me is the conversation. We don't want to replicate that in the rest of our cities in America.
I actually like restaurants, but I agree with you on the social aspect. But I agree with you on the social aspect. I think this is, and I was struck today with the fact that you were calling Central Business District Central Social District, and kind of just bringing this idea back of how do we get together, because not to diss or say social media is not good, and it's not at all. On the contrary, it is something that is now intertwined with our day-to-day. But I don't think that the dominance, we shouldn't like just erase our social, physical spaces for the benefit of something else. And I think you've pointed to a couple of examples that are pretty striking.
So when you think about all the things you don't want, so how do you come up with an inclusive space that is more broadly engaging?
Well, obviously inclusion is a big question, right? Is how do you achieve it, especially in a case where there's a lot of exclusion and a lot of inequity in our society, and what has caused that, and it's a very large conversation. The way we have been working, I think, and many other designers, I think, are waking up to this and are doing it, is to, what is inclusion? First of all, it is really curiosity and respect for the other, and even in a way, a love for the other, like you want people in your life, and then giving them access. And in our case, what we're trying to do is to give access to the creators, to people with stories, to the creative process. So for instance, when we do a project in the north of Japan, we do it with the local Ainu communities, it's their stories that are being told. We work with their music. We did the same in Wendake and in other places. So the idea, I think, for me, it starts there with the narrative, to try to change the narrative about how we relate to each other through bringing other people's stories and not just be the one that's kind of raining down with a story, with a full concept, and just enjoy it as a thing. At least that's the way we look at it, in our little margin that we have to work with.
So I'll just introduce if you remember, so I work at Destination Canada, and it's a new business called Destination Development. And one of the things that we've looked at in terms of tourism is how do we shift the conversation from how many people came to something rather than what are the experiences that the local community wanted to showcase, and are they able to authentically and genuinely put that forward? So, the concept of storytelling and the fact that the community gets to own the story that needs to be told, and, visitors are enriched and in that exploratory fashion. So Manish, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to try to not be as controversial in every portion of this, but
Tell us what you love. Don't
okay.
tell me what you hate.
Okay, what do I love? I love so many things. I love humans, and I love, I think in terms of inclusivity, I think that's why the Museum of Ice Cream works. Is ice cream is inherently inclusive. It could be your first purchase as a kid, first time you used money. It's in almost every country. It's in every country in the world, and that inclusivity of ice cream makes it approachable. I think that. That is putting a art or putting a museum. We get crushed by like the art world saying like, is this like the death of museums? Like, no, this is the birth of museums. We've had a huge influence. Obviously, there were thousands of horrible copycats and Instagram traps that still exist, and a lot of that died out. But we'll see that again as TikTok is like changing. I think the perspective of people like creating places of play. But I think that. The inclusivity of a space where you can be a 4-year-old or you can be a 80-year-old and you can still love the same experience because that's ice cream is super powerful, and it's a powerful place for people to like dream and think of what is possible and how can we take old formats and I think the ice cream shop format is actually an incredible format, and the ice cream shops were actually growing like crazy before COVID. And one of the things that we saw, reasons why we chose ice cream beyond the fact that we love it, is that ice cream was attracting Gen Z people. We were seeing people waiting in line in the middle of winter in New York, and we're like, what is the formula here? The formula was as simple as good quality food with nice design space with a friendly person. Like, it's not that complicated. That ultimately you just want that one interaction, that ice cream tastes better. And so I think that those are the things that like I care about, and that hospitality is coming back in some ways. It's like that service element has to be so much more important if we're competing against Netflix. We as city builders have to compete against Netflix. That's our only competitor right now.
Okay. So in your careers, what kind of experience do you believe provide the greatest positive impact to the community?
Ice cream.
Wow, we went from a fist bump to a full-on hand slap. Wow.
Best friends.
I can't think of a day where I haven't picked up my kids from school and they didn't want ice cream. So
In Montreal, in the middle of winter? Wow.
yeah, no, not winter. I don't know. Do you want to go with that?
People in Canada do eat more ice cream in winter.
And you
You're
still
at
don't have a
home.
museum in Canada.
Probably.
Yeah, we should talk about that. I think it is the way we see it is really the experiences that, first of all, that are unusual, unexpected. When we launched these forest night walks, it was taking a park where people go in the daytime to enjoy, and then turning it into something else at night, something completely unexpected. And the second component, I would say, is really when they're engaged, when they are next to each other and walking and chatting and just discovering things together. And I think these are the places where people want to be. They want to interact with other people. They want to be friendly, and they want to be given the means to do that. So I think these are the ones that have the most positive impact. And not to say that the ones that are also having positive impact on the community around them. So when you have a destination, a place that people are visiting, it becomes what happens around it becomes very important. So then you start having complementary offering, and then in some cases you have, if it's a permanent setting, you will have further development. You will have more money in the community to develop more infrastructure. Obviously, this means that all people are working together. Stakeholders are working together to make this happen. But I think this is when the impact is just beyond the experience itself.
I think our public parks, the parks and the way parks have been activated, especially after COVID. Like Bryant Park here in the city, to me, is like a place of play, and the programming and the interactions has always been a North Star for me. But I think just also how people are activating like in the cities. Like I was here last week, and there was a version of SantaCon with Alice in Wonderland, and people were all dressed up on the streets on this kind of like rogue crawl. I think there is creativity that is emerging again. That's always been there, and sort of creating experiences in the streets. We saw that in COVID. There was some streets in Brooklyn where people were having like DJ sets every single day at 7 o'clock during the period where we were banging our our pots and to celebrate the first responders. I think there's that innovation, but then the reality comes when then the city starts like shutting it down, and then your cops come, and then three neighbors like prevent like sort of community. And when we see in the village life, like I'm inspired now by what we see in like a random village in Greece, and their kids out at midnight, and they're in your public spaces, and how we can activate our public spaces in that way. As I said, I think the anchor exists if right there in the city, and instead of us being a museum of ice cream as an anchor, that's how we're getting our real estate. Is we are an anchor. We don't want to be the anchor, but we are the anchor. We're drawing 97% of our traffic from outside of the traffic. We want our cities to be partners in being anchors of traffic, and we keep coming across challenges where we can't shut down a street, we can't activate, we can't bring an ice cream truck on the street because of these barriers. And so there is like a sort of challenge and dialogue that I think is like happening that's not happening, that is preventing us from, I think, being great partners with the public spaces in the cities.
Okay. Thank you. And what do you think the future of the city experiences will look like?
Well, it depends what we do, right? If we don't do anything, we know what it's going to be. It's going to be havoc. It's going to be collapse because of what we're seeing. And if we do something, I think a lot of people are now, they have expressed this earlier today at all the conversations about the urgency of action and what we can do to change things. And the pandemic has shown that we can actually do things. We have stopped the whole world for 2 years because there was an urgency. So I think we can do it as well. We've been talking to all sorts of people. Real estate developers are talking and trying to do things differently. Shopping malls, cities, CBDs, they're all trying to do things differently. And I think kind of putting more urgency and more action, more intentional action to do better I think will bring better cities inevitably.
I think that I've been saying this for many years. I think the automobile is still our biggest challenge, and I think that's has set us back 100 years. I think it's in American cities, and to the professor's talk that so much inequity, so much racism came out of the automobile, and our cities are permanently scarred. And until we like fix the issue, and that's why New York is a great. I think New York's done an amazing job on bike lanes. I am like the most avid city biker that exists, and moving to a city like Austin, which is still heavily automobile focused and does not have bike lanes, and is trying to build like outdated modes of public transportation, like a subway that only goes like 3 miles, that makes no practical sense, instead of like figuring out how do we actually communicate up above ground with humans, like going together and walking and biking. That's to me, I think the automobile is still our biggest hurdle to innovation in cities.
Okay. We are out of time, but I'm going to ask just one last question. We're parting for the day. So one message that you want to share with this audience? Anything.
Me first? You go.
Okay. Well, I think I'd love us to think about our cities more as solar punk than 2049. If you know the references, meaning less this topic and something that could be better, could be more beautiful, it could be integrated with nature. We can have a place in them. We are together. I think that's a good way to think about it because we need a positive narrative. We need to think that we can do things versus just being in a doom mode.
Okay, thank you.
Experimentation, just pop up, doing things, organizing, creating moments. I think the beauty of what we've done. Your name is Moment Factory. For us, we started as a 30-day pop-up. It was not meant to be a business, had no idea that it was going to be something. We see 1 million visitors today, and I never thought I was going to have Museum of Ice Cream on a business card. My parents certainly were traumatized by my whole career. But it started with that moment, which was like taking a risk of building a sprinkle pool. And so I want to see that more. I want to see how we as an industry can be more supportive of people creating those moments, and hopefully we can get more city partners. I think I'm inspired by Canada in that way, where the Canadians seem to be more supportive of creatives and artists taking to the streets, and so finding those cities and those communities. I will go to any city that wants to do something, not just a big city, to create those moments if they're willing. And so keep making moments, and if you need help, contact me. I'm at Flavor. I'm Flavor Flav at Museum of Ice Cream. So reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Fadi. Thank you, Manish. This was fun.
Thank you.
See you guys later.
Thanks, man. Now we have all the
Oh, we're hugging. So much closer.
Okay, we are ready for our final 5 minutes of the day. Nolan, sit down. I had to call out my one friend, City of Vancouver. Hopefully we'll all be friends by the end of the day, though. For our third and final, I like that all of you did actually go and sit back down. I wield such power. Our final and third Ignite talk to wrap up the day. Chef Jean-Georges von Richten is one of the world's most famous chefs. His skills extend far beyond the kitchen. A savvy businessman and restaurateur, Jean-Georges is responsible for the operation and success of 49 restaurants worldwide. Last week, Chef Jean-Georges and the Howard Hughes Corporation opened the Tin Building, a 53,000 square foot food hall at Pier 17 at the Seaport in Lower Manhattan. The new culinary destination is an adaptive reuse of the Tin Building, an historic waterfront property that once served as the site of the Fulton Fish Market. Chef Jean-Georges will be leading a tour of this new landmark for World City on Wednesday. To give us a preview of this New York landmark, Chef has prepared a short film. Let's see what this delicious new destination is all about.
At a young age, I was always known as the entertainer of the family. Music, lighting, you know.
Welcome to the Tin Building. Read all about it.
This building is very iconic, very important, 120 years old. 70% of America's fish supply came through the Tin Building. All the fresh fish arrived here, on fish from the East Coast, from Europe, from Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, everything came to New York. The idea was really to redo this iconic fish market, but give it a flavor of the world. So we decided to add a little sushi restaurants, something Japanese. We have a brasserie, we have a crepe and dosa, we have a seafood counter, of course, for oyster and fish and chips. I think I remember back in the days, all the tracking to carry the fish were Italians. So we had to do, of course, Italian. You know, today the world is a little more modern, so we needed to do a vegan, vegetarian restaurant. And of course, we had to do an Asian restaurant. This is House of the Red Pearl. It feels like some memory from Hong Kong, from my 5 years in Asia. It's a little Chinatown, 1970s, little James Bond. The idea was really to create a New York market. New York is a melting pot. Our chef at the Italian she's from Korea. Our chef in the Chinese is from Spain. So even the cast of character, our chefs and the whole team is a melting pot, you know. So it's a voyage, you know, into New York in one building. It's a wonderful time. We wanted to create a world-class market. And Howard Hughes really gave us a carte blanche, and really they were very amazing, you know, to be able to have a partner like that to support on every decision, on every, they were there for us. I mean, the seaport area got hit really hard about 10 years ago when Sandy, the storm, really hit New York. I mean, this part was completely flooded. It took about 8 years in the making because it's a historical building. It's a chef's dream, and a little bit of a nightmare too. It was hard work.
You know, we always hit the bullseye. Even if we don't even try.
All the columns you see in the building, we saved about 93 of them. They're all cast iron. So we really feel proud to be part of this rebirth of downtown, especially the Seaport District. People from the neighborhood visiting, and people are blown away when they walk in. It's really gratifying. And I feel like everything started in New York, in this area. Now we're part of it. I've been here for 35 years. So. Yeah, I spent more time in New York the last 35 years than any place in the world. So I feel I'm part of the fabric of New York. The world is so, in space, in the clouds. Food puts people together. I think food makes people comfortable. It's very tactile. People are into it more now than ever. I mean, here in this restaurant, we serve everything family style, so right away you're sharing, and it's, it's a wonderful feeling. I mean, the most proud is really to be part of this community here and to really create something unique. We find amazing people with open heart and very friendly. I always say good service, start with a good person. I'll be out soon.
Let's go. Right here. Storage, space market here, located by the East River. Look, it says it right here. Yeah. Welcome to the Spin Building.
That looked amazing, and now I'm very hungry. Takeaways. So for me, today, I feel like we've talked about people at the center of development, about housing being healthcare, about CPR for cities, and how to make way for a future where wealth is not just money, but social fulfillment, physical health, and creative capacity. So I'm so glad to be in person here with all of you to be able to speak about this, and hopefully you'll now get a chance to talk to each other in the coming 24 hours. So that is technically it for the program today, but I have a few important reminders for everyone first before we wrap up. So first, can we please give another final round of applause for today's wonderful presenters? And tomorrow morning starts at 9 a.m. sharp here in the theater with Thomas Heatherwick. The Resonance Cafe that you were at just before, behind you, is open at 8 a.m.
Great, thanks, Christina. And while our program here on the New York stage is done for the day, we are about to take a little bit of a spin around the globe on our virtual world stage. There are a few sessions going on, one starting in a few minutes where we'll be traveling to Hong Kong, which I know is one of your favorite cities, Christina, for a panel that will be discussing how we address an aging city. And then we'll be traveling to Canada for a session on placemaking between the buildings and how we can make districts and developments more vibrant. And then lastly, Greg Clark, famed professor and urbanist from London, will be chatting with leaders in Sydney and Singapore to discuss what's next for world cities in the Asia-Pacific region. And Greg will be joining us tomorrow here in person to wrap up things with all of the takeaways from his conversations over the last couple of days. All part of our goal here at World City to bring you the best ideas about cities from the best cities in the world. And as Christina said, looking forward to connecting and having conversation with all of you here in the next few minutes. So we'll see you all back here in this great city tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.